Twisty puzzle terminology is broken. Cubes and cuboids are fine, but for other series of puzzles, the way one refers to them makes no sense. Is this a kilominx or a kibiminx? Why does the name of this tetrahedral puzzle contain the suffix used by dodecahedral puzzles? Why does mega mean 3 layers here, but 4 layers here? In this video, I will attempt to create a standardized system for categorizing different types of twisty puzzles that is simple to understand. Will it catch on? Nope. Everyone is already way too used to the names that we've been using for decades. I just find this interesting to think about. The different series of puzzles that I will be going through are the minxes, pyraminxes, morphexes, squares, and even cubes, shape mods, cuboids, and higher dimensional puzzles. Starting off with the minxes. Now, this has already been a long ongoing discussion in the cubing community about what we should call these things. As it currently stands, all of the minxes with an odd number of layers, 3, 5, 7, 9, etc., use metric prefixes in their names. So the 3-layered one is the megaminx, the 5-layered is the gigaminx, 7 teraminx, 9 petaminx, and so on. But if we go in the other direction, the logic that we've been using should dictate that the single-layered one should be called the kilominx, but for some reason, the 2-layered one is, leaving the single-layered one to just be called the 1x1 megaminx. But then what do we call the other even-layered ones? Master kilominx, elite kilominx, 8x8 kilominx. You didn't even try with that one. Most people will agree that the system of using metric prefixes for the odd-layered minxes is a good system and makes sense, and I agree with that. The even-layered minxes, however, we need to talk about those. Luckily, there has already been a solution that a lot of people have been suggesting, using binary prefixes for the even-layered minxes. So the 2x2 one gets called the kibiminx, 4-layered is the mebiminx, 6 gibiminx, 8 tebiminx, and so on. Thanks to this, the name kilominx can be returned to its rightful owner. Now, this is a pretty good system for the Mink series of puzzles, but unfortunately, I have not seen any discussion about fixing the even more broken naming systems of other series of puzzles. So let's take what we've learned from the Mink series and go on to fix our other twisty puzzles. The pyraminxes. Well, just the 3-layered one is called the pyraminx, even though it's not part of the minx puzzles. So we can't call this group the minxes because that's already taken. But we can't call it the pyras either because that's just the cubing slang term for pyraminxes. We'll think about what to call these later. First, let's take a look at their names. Master pyraminx, Professor pyraminx, Royal pyraminx. These are some pretty bad names. What about the smaller ones? 1x1 pyraminx, and then the 2x2 pyraminx just doesn't exist as far as I know. The closest thing that we have is the pyraminx duo, which is, something. As you can see, this naming system is just awful, so I would suggest that we take the system from the minxes and apply it to these as well. However, what should the suffix be? Pyra immediately comes to mind, but megapyra, gigapyra just doesn't roll off the tongue that well. Therefore, I propose the name Spike for this series of puzzles. It's easy to say, and it's only one syllable. Kilospike, Kibispike, Megaspike, Mebispike, Gigaspike, and so on. I like how it sounds. Next, we have the morphexes. Unlike the spikes, there is actually some semblance of a naming system. The 3-layered one is called the Master Morphix, the 4-layered is called the Megamorphix, the 5-layered is the Gigamorphix, and for 6-layered and up, they just don't have names. Now for the smaller morphixes, the 2-layered one is called the Pyramorphix or Pyromorphix, I've heard it pronounced both ways. And then the 1-layered morphix, if it were to come into existence, would be identical to the Kilospike, since they would both just be a tiny tetrahedron. So I feel like we don't need to think about that one. Now, I would suggest that we copy the same system from the minxes and the spikes over to the morphixes. But on the other hand, the name Master Morphix is already so iconic and cool that replacing it with Megamorphix would honestly be a downgrade. Here, I see that the current Megamorphix and Gigamorphix are actually forming the beginning of a system. So we could branch out from there with all of the higher layered morphixes by using the next metric prefix. So the 6 layered would be the teramorphics, 7 petamorphics, 8 examorphics, and so on. This allows us to keep the current names of the pyromorphics and mastermorphics, which is good because they sound cool and they don't infringe upon the names of other puzzles like the Megaspike Pyraminx did. Next up are the squares. Now, these don't exactly have a layering system like all of the others so far, so let's see what we have to work with. Square 0, square 1, square 2. So, how did we get from one to the other? To get from the square 0 to the square 1, we make a cut in the shape of a plus on the top and bottom layers of the puzzle. To get from the square 1 to square 2, we do the same thing. These are the only mass-produced puzzles in the Square series, but looking at higher order square puzzles that others have made, they also follow this trend. The existing system for this series of puzzles seems pretty good, so I say we keep it as is. It will be fine as long as people follow the trend as they make higher order square puzzles, but with how intricate all the pieces will have to get as more cuts are made, I can't exactly see anyone designing a square 7 or anything. Oh my god! We also have the super square one in all of its varieties, but from what I gather, those don't actually exist. They're just really vivid false memories that a lot of cubers have developed for some reason, because these things do not actually exist. There is no way that they do exist, and if I ever see one, I'll know that I'm having a nightmare, because the super square one does not exist. Now that we've gone over all of those, let's take a look back at the standard cubes. These follow a very neat and consistent system, but it was not always this way. Back in the day, it was the Pocket Cube, Rubik's Cube / Magic Cube, Rubik's Revenge, and the Professor's Cube. Higher layered puzzles were not considered because they were thought to be impossible to produce. The current system that we have now is pretty good, but it sounds boring and can be a bit of a mouthful. 3x3, 4x4, 5x5, easy to say. 7x7, 11x11, 17x17, someone could get tired just by saying them. So what if we bring over the system from the Minxes and the Spikes? Suddenly the 3x3 becomes the Mega Cube. Doesn't that sound so much cooler? And it's the same amount of syllables, so it's not any more difficult to say. It can even make the names of some puzzles easier to say. 7x7, which is 5 syllables, suddenly becomes Terracube, with 3 syllables. Even better, 17x17, which has 7 syllables, becomes Ronacube, with 3 syllables. Unfortunately, the metric prefixes do not go on forever, so as it currently stands, the largest puzzle which can fit into the system is the 19x19, or the Quetacube. Though since the existing binary prefixes are merely shortened versions of the metric prefixes ending in B, we could easily create a new binary prefix and extend the list to the 20x20 Quebicube, while also giving a name to the 18x18 Robicube. Now that we've mostly standardized our system, we can apply it to any other series of puzzles. Fisher cubes? Take the Schur from Fisher, and now we have the Schurs. Windmill cubes? Now we have the mills. Mirror cubes, otherwise known as mirror blocks? Now we have the blocks. Ghost cubes? Now we have the ghosts. What about higher dimensional puzzles? For 4-dimensional hypercubes, we can take the suffix ract from tesseract, and we can use that. This 4-dimensional 2x2 that has been going around lately can now be called the Kibiract. Now, there is one last thing that I would like to cover. Cuboids. We can't simply use prefixes and suffixes for these, since they have a different amount of layers on different axes. Therefore, I would like to propose a system where we shorten all of our current prefixes into single syllables that we then attach together from lowest to highest value, creating the names of our puzzles. You might notice that I've replaced the B in the binary prefixes with V, but that is because I find B more difficult to say at the end of a syllable. I'm not sure if that's just a me thing, but I'm trying to make it as easy to pronounce as possible. Using this system, the 1x2x3 becomes the Kikivme, the 3x3x5 becomes the Memegi, the 4x4x6 becomes the Mevmevgiv, the, that cube becomes the Kikikiv. However, cuboids can also have shape mods. Let's say we have some Fisher cuboids. We can just add the Schur suffix onto the end of the cuboid's name. Now, the 4x4x6 Fisher cuboid becomes the Mevmevgif Schur. There we have it. This is something that I have been thinking about for a while, so now I am finally sharing it. There are many other types of puzzles that I have not covered, mainly because I have no idea how I would apply the system to them. But if you have any ideas, I would love to hear them. Goodbye.